Um, hi everyone. Good morning. Hi Abhay. Hi Mohammed. Hi Sailesh. Hi Krishna. Hey Hari, Richalin, Anita, Vishnu, Adam, Fatima, Abhishek, Subalakshmi, An- Anbarasan. Hi Adarsh, Pallavi, Raimundo. Hey, okay, so we have 57. Still 2 minutes to go. So maybe we'll just wait 5 minutes for everyone to join and then we'll start. Hi Manideepa, good to know. Hi Tim. So until we wait for everyone to join, right? Just a quick question. Were you able to install any database, whether PostgreSQL or any other RDBMS is also fine. So have you guys tried to install? Is there anyone who is still not having a database installed? Okay, installed. That's good. Yes, Oracle. That's fine. How can we practice SQL while the class is going on as we have to see the commands as well? Okay, so what I can do is I will try to in everyone hopefully is present in the Telegram group, right? So what I can do is for each session, right? Generally, whatever concepts I'm covering, if possible, I'll try to share some scripts before the class. Okay. Uh, yeah, maybe not all the scripts because some of the scripts might just come up in the class itself, but in general if there is any particular script or data set that I will be using for that particular session, I'll try to share it before the class. So maybe that can help. Or generally what I can do is I can also paste the script whatever I am writing live, right? I can just put it in the chat and you can then copy it and you can then practice it. Okay, so I had Microsoft SQL prior to this course. So if you were using Microsoft SQL Server, you can still continue to use it. You don't need to. If you are interested in learning PostgreSQL, that's fine. But most of the things will be, in fact, I think 95% of the things will be the same. Whatever you learn, wherever I see there is a difference, maybe when it comes to a procedure, the syntax will be slightly different. When it comes to recursive SQL queries, I think the syntax will be slightly different, and maybe I think in pivot, when we will be learning pivot, the syntax might be slightly different, and maybe some functions, okay, inbuilt function, especially I think the date formatting functions would be slightly different. In that case, I will give you specific queries specific to Microsoft SQL Server, Oracle, MySQL, and PostgreSQL. But other than that, I think they are all the same. So you, it does not matter which RDBMS you are using. Okay, you can choose your whatever you like. I cannot join Telegram. Okay, so I see in the Telegram group, I think we have around 200 people, right? Let me just check. So we have 206 members already. And I believe all the 206 joined from that link what I shared, because I have not actually manually added anyone. So the link has worked for 206 people. I'm not sure for some of them why that link does not work. Uh, what you can do is, whatever email that you are used to register for the light hall course, right? You send me an email from that particular email ID, and then maybe because I will try to verify that email ID with the light hall team, and then I will try to manually include you into the Telegram group. Okay. Okay, so what I can do is, let me do one thing. We still have a couple of minutes before we start. I'm just going to let me just copy one Telegram. I'll create a new Telegram group right now and let me share it with all of you. Just give me a minute. Okay, so I just created one new link for the Telegram group. I'm just pasting it here. I hope you can see it. Can you, whoever, so I think Dolly and I saw Divya and May. You guys are not able to join the Telegram group. Can you just try with this link that I just shared now? Okay, so Dolly says Telegram is working. So I am not sure because most of them have already joined with that link. Why it does not work for some people? I have no idea actually. Okay, the PPT I have placed it in the class page. Shubham, I have also shared it in the Telegram group. If you are not part of Telegram group, you can download it from the class page. So the same page where you joined my class, right? So basically you go to Light Hall on the right top menu, you will see your name. Just click on your name. You will see an option for classes. Click on the classes. Then you would see my particular class and then you click on that. And then if you come down, you would see a section for attachment. So under the attachment section, you would see all the documents, okay, which includes this PPT. Yeah, you would explain my question, which asked in Telegram. Quota. So, okay, your question is related to which language is used to connect database and RDBMS, right? That's the question, right? I'll answer that. Okay, they might not have Telegram available in their country. Okay, so Adam raises a good point. Maybe Telegram is not supported in your region. Maybe you can just check that. Okay, can we use PostgreSQL in browser without installing? I'm not aware of that. If there is any specific websites where you can straight away connect to PostgreSQL without installation, I am not aware of such websites. Yesterday, I saw someone sharing SQLite. SQLite is actually an RDBMS on its own. Of course, you can use SQLite, no problem. Yeah, but I am not sure if there is any such link. You can go to many other platforms like Stata Scratch or Elite Code, or I think even that Hacker Rank and everything. But I don't think so. You can create tables there. You may be able to execute the queries that they already have, the questions for the queries for the question that they have already have. But I don't think so. You can create tables, load new data sets, and all that. So install too, but I don't use it often. DB never really use it now. Okay. Okay, fine. Okay, so let's start then. We have 150 plus already joined. So let's do one thing, okay? Any questions that you have, right? You try to post your questions in the Q&A tab. I hope everyone can see the Q&A tab on the right side here. So it becomes easier for me to track your questions so that I don't miss any important questions. Okay. Now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by answering a couple of questions that you guys asked uh, in the Telegram group. Okay. So the first one is, I think Harsha or Kota, someone asked it. I think Harsha, your Kota, I see the name Kota here, but I think in Telegram it is Harsha. I believe you are the same person. Uh, so his question was, I think, okay, so let's do one thing. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. First of all, let me move this to my monitor. So let me know when you're able to see my screen, okay? Okay. So, okay, so you guys can see my screen. I wanted to start from here, but I'll just go back a little. Okay, I think this particular diagram, some confusion maybe with this. I think people are, what Harsha asked or what he was asking is, he understands this application is basically any website or any software that we use, right? And this basically is the RDBMS that we were talking about. The interaction here happens through SQL because that is the only language that RDBMS understands. But what about these two? What is the interaction between these two? Now, I think this is one thing that maybe I should have told yesterday. Maybe shortage of time, I forgot to tell. The thing is, if whenever you go and you try to install any RDBMS, whether it is Oracle, MySQL, PostgreSQL, or anything, you will not be installing database separately, and you will not be installing RDBMS separately. They come as a single package, right? So generally for our local use, they always come as a single package. We go and we install it, and internally what happens is, internally they will have a separate section for storage. So there is a storage area which basically is the actual database, and then there is all this management system which kind of is the only system that we can interact with using an IDE tool, maybe pgadmin, maybe MySQL Workbench or SQL Developer or whatever, right? So these two things are generally, we don't see it. Okay, I cannot install database separately. I cannot install RDBMS separately. They come together as a single package. Internally, this is what happens. Okay, so I was trying to explain you internally what happens, right? So how does database communicate with RDBMS? To be frank, it's an internal process. That is how the RDBMS architecture is designed. I'm not really sure how that internal structure works. Okay, so I don't think so. They are using SQL or they are using any language. It's basically the software that is built by the same company, right? So how they interact with each other, I'm not really aware of that, and I don't think so. You guys need to be bothered about that until and unless you are planning to get into that database support kind of a role where you want to become a DBA, or you want to basically maintain the databases, etc. Okay, so these two are, even though they are, I explained it separately. Whenever you want to install a RDBMS, they come as a single package. Internally, they will have a separate section for storage, and they will have a separate section for all this processing, which is done by this RDBMS. Okay, so there is no language as such, as far as I am aware. This happens internally by the system itself. Okay, so SQL is used here in between the application and the RDBMS, and how RDBMS and database communicates, it's an internal process, and it might be different for different RDBMS. Okay, so we don't really have to bother about this. And one thing is, they don't really use SQL here. Okay, uh, Kota, I'm not sure if this is clear to you, but I would say don't bother about this. We are mainly focused on this part. Okay, how we are going to use an IDE, and whatever, whether you're working as a software developer, data analyst, or whatever role, right? We will generally be using these two things internally. How the storage of the data happens and how it is retrieved by the RDBMS, it is something that is done by the system. We uh, as a developer, I have worked for almost 13 years. We have never bothered about this just happens internally by the system. Okay, that's to answer your question. And then I saw someone ask about data mart versus data warehouse. I'll not go in depth, but in short, right, everything is a database. Okay, your data warehouse is a database, data mart is a database. The only difference, and I already explained you what data warehouse and database is. A database will have everything: important data, required data, unwanted data, useless data, crap or logs, or any transaction, anything from a company will be stored in a database. Data warehouse is specifically built for a particular purpose, generally for reporting or for analytics purpose. They will only pull in the required data. Okay, but generally what happens is, data warehouse also will be very huge. Okay, when it comes to data mart, what data mart is, and if you remember what I told yesterday, in my current project that I'm working in, my current insurance company, we are actually building a data mart. What we are doing is, we have a specific requirement. Okay, I'm not sure if you have heard of IFRS 17. It's a new insurance format, okay, which is basically going to go live from 2023. Okay, uh, so for this new IFRS 17, it's basically a new financial format. Okay, how the reporting needs to be done, and how profit and loss of a policy needs to be calculated. There is a particular functionality or requirement given by basically there is some international body that sits how they manage all the insurance policies. They have given this particular format, and every insurance company is supposed to implement this insurance format. So one way we can implement a new format is, we can basically build a software, or build a basically this new reporting inside the database itself, or inside the existing data warehouse itself. Okay, but what we did in our project is, we, instead of using the existing data warehouse, we created a new data mart. Okay, new data mart is again a new database. Data mart is also a database, but it will be much smaller than the data warehouse, and it is built for a very specific purpose, generally for one single project. Okay, in a data warehouse you might have multiple different projects working on the same data warehouse, but in a data mart generally we build it for one single project. And the data mart that we are building is, we are again going to pull in the data from the data warehouse. Okay, so let's say I told you that there might be 1000 tables in the database, and there might be uh, maybe like what millions of GBs of data or something like that. But in a data warehouse we might only pull in, let's say, 100 tables, which is required for all the multiple projects that the company is working on. Okay, when I'm building a data mart, I might only pull in 10 tables. I'm just giving you an example. I might just pull in 10 tables because for this particular project that I'm building, I'll only be using these data from these 10 tables. Okay, so a data mart is a smaller, you can call it like a subsection, or a small part of the data warehouse which we are building separately for a particular project. Okay, so in short, that's what it is. Does it matter if we access the database by the command line instead of some GUI? Like, it does not matter, Tim. It's your personal preference. Some people prefer to use command line. Okay, so if you want to access pgadmin, or sorry, PostgreSQL with command line, and not just PostgreSQL, I think Oracle also. For very long time, I used to use the SQL. What is it called? I forgot that name. Okay, for Oracle also we have a command line tool. We used to use that a lot. But then it's up to you. So if you want to use an IDE, use an IDE. But if you are getting started with SQL, right, I would recommend that, yeah, SQL plus, correct. So, but I would say if you're getting started to learn, it's better to use an IDE, because you can see, you can basically visualize all the things that database has more easily. In a command line tool, it's not that easy. There are advantages of using command line tool, but for a beginner, I would say just start with an IDE, then you can learn command line tool later on. Okay, so I think this is the question. Was there any other question in the Telegram group that I missed? Regarding the recording, I think we already had many chat exchanges. I see most of them are satisfied with the recording quality. So I'll not comment on that now. Anything else? If nothing, let me just start. Just remind me if there is anything that I missed. So is PostgreSQL nothing? Yes, it is an RDBMS. But okay, but when I say RDBMS, it also has internally a database. Okay, because all the storage is done in the database, and whenever you say PostgreSQL, we generally refer to it like RDBMS, but some people would refer to it like database as well. But whatever it is, you should understand that it includes both RDBMS and the database. Okay. Okay. So now I think there are no other questions. Let's come to today's class. Okay, so one thing I want to answer. Many people, not many, I think few people were telling, can you give the data sets? I think there were a lot of chats about the data sets. So one thing I want to say is, yesterday there was no data sets because I was just giving you introduction, just the foundation of SQL. Today maybe we will create some data sets live in the class. Okay, but in future what I can do is, I'll maybe by the end of the class I'll just tell you what you can expect in tomorrow's class. Okay, what we are going to learn. Okay, so that way if you want to get prepared for that, you can do that. Okay, now I'm just going to tell you what we are planning to do for today and tomorrow. Okay, in today's session and tomorrow's session, I want to cover all of these SQL commands. Now, we know what is SQL, right? It's basically a language that can be used to interact with the database or the RDBMS, right? Any application, if they want to interact with the database, and every application has to interact with the database, because every application will use some sort of data, and data is always stored in the database. And if the application wants to interact with the database, SQL is the only language that they can use. Okay, that's the whole purpose. But when it comes to SQL, there are a lot of different things that you can do. Okay, If you want to query the data or see the data, we can use the select statement. Now select statement is part of this particular command. Okay, if you want to load the data or store some data, then there is a particular command that we can use. If you want to remove data, there is particular commands to do that. If you want to give some access or revoke some access from a particular user, okay, then you have some commands. Okay, and there are many different types of commands to do different operations in SQL. So in this session and in tomorrow's session, we'll mainly focus on this. Okay, that is, I'll try to cover all the different SQL commands, all the different types of SQL commands that we have. We'll also see what we'll also do is we'll try to create a new database. We'll try to create some tables. We'll come up with some new data set. Okay, some meaningful data set. We'll try to have some data into that, and we'll also talk about constraints. Okay, different types of constraints, why they are used and why we should be using them. We'll talk about basic building blocks about a table. So these are the different things that I will be covering today and tomorrow. Okay. RDBMS has temp memory for processing SQL. There will always be a temp memory. Most of the RDBMS has. We would generally call it like cache. Is there any way we can get access to this? I have already shared it, Tim. Tim, are you not part of the Telegram group? Even if you're not part of Telegram group, you can find it in the attachment section in the Lighthall class page. So you can download it from there. Okay. Okay. So one quick update. Generally, I saw someone messaging here. The classes are held on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, and that is true. But on 17th of August, it's a Wednesday. I have change that particular class from Wednesday to Tuesday. So the 17th August class is moved to 16th. The reason is on 17th I have some personal commitment in the morning, so I cannot take the class. That's why I moved that class one day before. Okay, just look at the schedule in the class page. A way to learn this chat. Randir, what do you mean by the question? Any easy way to learn this chat? So this chat is basically for your reference. What exactly is that you want to learn? So I will be explaining all of this. Okay. Okay. So let's start now. Generally in SQL, we have five types of SQL commands. Okay. So we have data definition language, also referred to as DDL. We have data manipulation language, which is called as DML. We have data control language. We have transaction control language, and we have data query language. Okay. Now, each of these five different types of commands are meant to do a particular operation in SQL. Okay. Now let's start with DDL. Okay. Now data definition language. Basically, what this means is all the SQL commands that are part of data definition language is used basically to either create a new structure in the database or modify the structure or remove a structure from the database. When I'm talking about a structure, basically what I mean is a database object. Okay. Yesterday, you guys already told me there are several types of database object. Table is one of the most important database object. We also have weave, we have synonyms, we have indexes, we have procedures, functions, packages, and so many other things. These are all called as database objects. So if you want to create any database object or remove a database object from the database or modify a database object from the database, then we use these DDL commands. Okay. Now the specialty of DDL command is as soon as you execute a DDL command, it will be automatically saved to the database. Okay. So if I want to create a table, then I can use the create command. If I want to drop a table from the database, I can use the drop command. And if I want to modify the table structure, okay, I can use the alter, and then truncate is basically used to remove the data at once from a table. Okay. This is basically an overview. I'm going to explain this with proper examples in the next few minutes, but I'll just give an overview first. Okay. So this is what we do with, if you want to modify or create a structure or of any database object, we use DDL. Once the database object is created, for example, a table is created, okay, then the all the purpose of having a database is basically to store data and then do something with that data, right? And all that is done using the DML commands, right? So if we want to load data into a table, we use the insert command. If we want to modify the existing data, we use update. If I want to remove data from the table, then we use delete. Okay. And then there is another command called merge. Merge is not supported in all the RDBMS. As far as I know, PostgreSQL does not support merge. and I'm not sure if Microsoft SQL Server, I don't think so, it also supports. I know Oracle supports merge. Okay, so and this merge command is not so much widely used. Generally, we use these three commands. What merge will basically do is it can either do update or delete, or it can basically do either do any of these three. Okay, so it can do it's something like if a data exists in your table, then it will do an update. If a data does not exist, then it will do an insert. Okay, so it can do based on the condition, it can do any one of the two. Okay, I'm going to explain this a little later, maybe in tomorrow's session. Okay, and then so creation of the database structure, creation and modification of the database object, we use DDL. Anything to do with data, we use DML. Okay, that's the thing. If you want to work with data, if you want to modify, load data, DML is used. If you want to do something with database object, DDL is used. Okay, next comes DCL. DCL basically includes only two commands, grant and revoke. As the name suggests, what it is basically used is to provide or revoke permissions. Okay, generally what happens is we might be working on some project and we might have to share the table data or something like that to a third party, maybe a client, or maybe a uh, maybe some third party vendor or someone. Okay, maybe some outside party who is not part of your team, and you don't want them to access everything. So in that case, what you do is you give them limited access. Okay, and you can do that by using this grant and revoke. Okay, so that is what it is. Of course, we are going to look at this with a proper examples. You'll better understand them. Okay, then comes TCL. TCL basically includes commit, rollback, and save point. Now, what basically this is used is whenever you have an open transaction. So when I say open transaction, any execution that you do using these DML commands, okay, insert, update, delete, or merge, even after you have executed these commands, they will not be automatically saved to the database. They will be hanging around in your session. Okay, if you want to save it to the database, you will need to do a commit. In other words, it's basically telling save permanently into the database. Okay, and let's say after you did one of these transactions, when I'm saying transactions, basically whenever you run any of these commands, we kind of call the number of records it will impact, we call it like a transaction. Okay, uh, if you did some insert, let's say you inserted 100 records and then you realize, oh, something was wrong, I want to revoke that. Okay, I want to remove, I don't want to save that to the database. Then you can do a rollback. Sorry. Okay, so it's basically we use TCL for anything whenever we want to either save the transaction permanently into the database, or we don't want to save something to the database. In that case, we can do rollback. Okay, now this commit and rollback can only be applied for DML command. So once you have executed a DML command, then you can go ahead and you run any of these TCL commands. Okay, for a DDL command, you don't need TCL command, because as I told you, in a DDL command, as soon as you run any of the DDL command, they will permanently make the changes in the database. When it comes to DML, as soon as you run the DML command, they don't permanently make the changes. After this, you will again have to run any of these TCL commands to either permanently make the changes or permanently remove the changes. Okay. Now the tricky part is in all these latest databases and all these latest tools, including PG admin, right? They have this auto commit feature. So what happens is, if there is auto commit, it's something like auto save. As soon as you run any of the DML command, you will not need to run this TCL command, because automatically it will save it to the database. Okay. Um, if you're using an IDE which where the auto commit is enabled, then you will not need to use it. But if you are using some other IDE, maybe like SQL developer, then I don't think so they have this auto commit feature, if I'm aware. In that case, you will have to manually run this TCL command. Okay, we'll see all this with the example. And then finally, the last type of command we have is DQL, which stands for data query language. And we all know what this is. It only has one language. It is one command, which is the select statement. And select statement is basically used to go and retrieve the data from the database. So if you want to view the data, if you want to fetch the data, we use the select statement. Okay, so this is a brief overview of the SQL command. Now let's go deeper. Okay, let's try to use these commands, create the objects, load the data, and do all these operations. Okay, before that, I'll just see if there is any question. um, Did merge. Okay, so SQL Server also supports merge. Okay, fine. Okay, so it does SCD1, right? Now this SCD1, okay, this SCD1 is part of your what is that, data modeling concepts. I would say don't confuse that with that, because you have SCD 1, 2, 3, 4, I think up to 6, right? Let's not get into all that. Okay, but yeah, merge. You can just treat merge like it can either do an update or an insert. Okay, depending on the condition. We'll see with an example maybe tomorrow. Okay, how the after and update function works. Both are modifying the table, right? How the alter and update. Okay, very good question from Pratiksha. So she's basically telling what is the difference between alter and update. Okay. Now, as I told you, right, this DDL is basically works with the database object. If I want to, so let's say I created a table with 5 columns. Okay. And if I want, after I created the table, after 2 months, I realize that, oh, I need to add two new columns or one new column. In that case, I can use the alter, because I want to change the structure of the table. So creating a new column, basically I'm changing the structure of the table. Whereas update is something like I have created this table, 5 columns, and let's say I have inserted 1000 records. Okay. After 2 days, I want to, let's say, update 10 of those records. Okay. I want to update the existing record in the table, the data in the table. So anything to do with data, that is where we do update. Okay. Update will modify the data in the table. Alter will modify the structure of the table. There is a big difference between these two. We'll see with an example. Okay. Um, Guys, if you have questions, place it in the Q&A. Otherwise, the teacher gets excited by all the questions all the time. I believe it takes time to let's keep it conversation. Okay, so Charita already said a good point. Let's try to follow that. Used to change the structure. So can I do one thing? I'll only look at the Q&A section for questions. Okay, and any if you have questions, you ask in the Q&A. But any discussions that you want, or that you can also post it here. Okay, to change the structure. Okay, so I think Kashif already answered. If I run the DML command, forget to the TCL command, what will be the default? So okay, good question by Feras. So he says if he runs a DML command, okay, because once you run a DML command, the transaction is open. It is neither saved. It's not saved to the database, right? What happens if he does not run the TCL command? So what would happen is, so let's say you run a DML command and you close the database, you exit the database. Generally, what happens is whenever you're trying to close the database, it will raise a pop-up saying that you have open transactions. Do you want to commit it or do you want to roll back it? Okay. I think you will have to choose any one of those options, so either commit or roll back. But let's say something happened, maybe your computer shut down, okay, or your server shut down, or it crashed. Okay, in that case, your transaction is not saved. So whatever open transactions were there, it will be lost. Okay, so that's what will happen. uh, you need to have okay, every time we use DML DCL, do we need to, for DCL also you don't need to use TCL. You need to use TCL commands only when you're using DML. TCL only works with open transactions, and open transactions are only basically we generally refer to it only for these DML commands. Okay, every okay, we'll come to save. Okay, save point is basically it's something like a breakpoint. Uh, so let's say you have a transaction, you have performed, let's say, 10 inserts, 5 updates, and then some deletes or something. Okay, and in between each of certain transactions you can put a breakpoint. Okay, and you can give it a name using the save point command. And then if you, after some time, you realize that I did something wrong after a certain point, you can roll back up to that point using save point. Okay, we'll see this with an example, but in the simple term, that is what it is. um, Data masking is a completely different thing. Revoke is basically you remove a permission. Data masking is generally we want to hide the scripts, or we want to hide the data. That is what we use data masking for. Okay, good question there from Ram. Difference between truncate and delete. Can you guys tell me what is the difference between truncate and delete? Anyone here is aware? Delete equal to data rollback. Truncate deletes all the data. Truncate command is used to delete. Okay, delete table, remove the database objects. Okay. Okay, so in short, right, both truncate and delete can do the same thing. Okay, delete, the only advantage of delete is, okay, when it comes to truncate, right, let's say your table has 1000 records. If you do a truncate on that table, every single record will get deleted. Okay, but when it comes to delete, right, the option that you have is, you have the option of deleting only some records. Okay, either you can delete all the records, or you can delete a few records based on certain conditions. Okay, that's one difference. Second difference is truncate is much faster than delete. If you want to delete a table, if you want to remove data from a table which is a huge table, okay, thousands of records or etc., then it's better to use truncate, because internally how truncate is built by the database is different from how delete is built. What happens with delete is, if you want to delete 1000 records, it will try to delete every record one by one, so it is much slower. Okay, but what happens with truncate is, internally it kind of like drops the entire table structure and recreates that table structure internally. You cannot see that. Because of that, it's much faster. It's not going to delete every record one by one. Okay, it's going to remove everything at once. Okay, so that's the two difference, but we will look at this with some proper examples later on. Okay, okay, so can we roll back? No, this TCL command cannot be applied for any of the DDL commands, because as I told you, as soon as you run a DDL command, they are permanently saved to the database. There is no way to undo these changes. Whatever you do in DDL, there is no way to undo it. Okay. Okay, there is a way to undo it using, there is certain commands, but that's a different thing. Uh, because what happens is, whenever you drop a table, they generally go into the recycle bin, and we have commands like flashback to get it back from the recycle bin, but I will not get into so much deeper and all of that. Okay, but in general, this is what these commands are meant to do. So, what is acid properties? What exactly is acid properties, man? I have heard of this. I'm not really very sure about all these terminologies. Okay, so anyone who is aware of acid properties? I think this should be something to do with these commands. There are different namings given, but I don't recall what it is. Maybe I can get back to you on this, Harsh. Okay. Okay, so I have one assignment for you, not assignment, maybe your help. So what I'm going to do now is, I can do this in two different ways. I already have some. I can come up with my own data set, so I can create some tables on my own. Okay, and then I can show you how to do drop, alter, truncate, insert, and all these commands. Or you can tell me what I need to do. Okay, so let's do one thing. I want to build a database, so I'll just try to, let's see if my PG admin is. Let me open my PG admin. Okay, so I'll just connect to this. I'll connect to this particular database. This is a default database, Postgres. Okay, so the very first thing that I will do is, I'm going to create a database. Okay, and then I will try to connect to that database. And inside that database, what I want to do is, I want to create some tables. Okay, we'll try to create some tables for a specific domain. Okay, maybe banking, maybe insurance, maybe school database, maybe something else. Okay, and then we will try to create multiple tables. We'll try to create relationship between these tables using constraints. We'll try to then perform all of these operations. We'll try to load some meaningful data into that, and we'll see how all of these commands will work for that particular data set. So my first question to you is, which domain should I use? So which domain should we use? Should we use banking? Should we use school database? Should we basically create a school database, banking, insurance? I don't know, maybe something else, whatever you guys tell me. So whatever I get more word for, I will try to use that. Okay, so I see banking, insurance, banking, retail, banking and insurance both. Okay, so pharma, okay, medical, okay, insurance, So I see a lot of requests for banking and insurance. uh, I think we should also have a section for polling here, right? Like some voting or something. um, can you guys tell me which got the highest votes, banking or insurance? So I'm just going to maybe count. It's going to take too much time to count. When I see banking and insurance both are having the same number of votes, is it? Or I think banking is more. Okay, now I see a lot of banking here. Okay, so how about we have both? Okay, fine. So let's do one thing. Let's create a banking data set now. Okay, and in the future class, I'm also going to come up with the insurance data set on my own. Okay, so for the banking data set, I will okay, so in Telegram we can keep poll, is it? Okay, maybe I will use it later on. Okay, so for let's come up with a banking database. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to create a database. So I'm just going to use a command create database, and let's say I'm going to create a demo database. Okay, or we are going to create a banking data set, right? So I'm going to call it like banking. Uh, I'll just call it like banking demo. Okay, uh, or maybe I'll just call it like banking. uh, yeah, so I'll just call it like bank. Okay, banking. So I'm just going to create this data set. So the data set, database, the database is created, simple command, right? Nothing else. Then what you do is just right click on this databases, just click refresh. Now you will be able to see it. Then right click on that particular database that you have created, and then just click on this query tool. It should open a session for your newly created database. And what I'm going to do is I'll just move this to the try to expand. So now let's come up with the all the tables that we need for the banking data set. Okay, so the data set that we're going to create is banking data set. Okay, now can you guys tell me what are the different tables we should have in a bank? You already know what a bank has, right? Now since we are going to create a new data set for bank, can you guys tell me what tables should have, because we need to store different types of data in different tables? So what sort of tables we should have? We use DDL operations. Why then truncate command? Okay, good question from Kota. I'll try to answer that later. Left corner of the screen is kind of not visible. Can you tell why you got left side of the screen is not visible? Which left side of the screen is not visible? You mean this one? Is it? Is it too small? Maybe I'll try to make it a little big. Okay, so we just had this database, this server, and then this database, and then inside this database we have now two different database. Postgres is the default one, banking is the one that I just created now. Okay, request you to that if there are any difference in SQL command between SQL server and Postgres, then please, yes, I will try to do that. All the SQL command that I am going to show here, right, it should work in all the databases. uh, it's okay, you don't have to do this simultaneously because I will be doing it based on your inputs. So you don't have to do it right now. Once I have created all these data sets here, I'm going to share it with you. Then maybe you can create it on your own and you can modify it on your own. Okay, so people are telling different tables that we need is okay. So first of all, we need a customer table. Okay, and then users. So users and customers, they can be the same, right? Account details. So let's say we have an account table. So we'll have a customer table. We'll have a account table. What else? So cust info, loans. Okay. So what is loans actually? Loans is kind of like a product, right, for a bank, because bank may not only provide loans, they might have other products as well, maybe demand standing instructions or uh, savings accounts. It's also one product of the bank. They might have some other type of product. So what I'm going to do is, instead of using loans, I'll just use, let's say, product. Okay, or I'll call it like products, accounts and customers. Okay, what else? Loans and advances, account number, deposit. Okay, so all this maybe term deposit or fixed deposit, they can all be part of the products, right? So these are all the different products in the bank. uh, what else? Mode of accounts. So The customer name, address, email, phone, they cannot be tables. They may be fields in the table, right? Employees, banking product details, employees. Okay, employees maybe yes. So customers and employees are two different kind of things. Um, First name, last name, these cannot be actually tables, right? We cannot, we would not want to create a table just to store names, right? uh, we generally want kind of little bigger picture, right? You're seeing your we are seeing your, oh, you're seeing my face there. Okay, okay, okay. Hey, can I remove this? Hmm. Hey, okay. So who asked? So yoga, what you can do is you have an option of maximizing the screen. So if you maximize the screen, I think my face will hide away. Then you can only see the whatever I am sharing. Can you do that? Okay. So where was I? Where did we go? Okay. So customer account, customer. So most of you guys are telling customer. Okay. Address. Uh, Maybe we can have address. I'll just put it now. We'll see if we want to create a table for address or not. Okay. Um, Maybe we'll not need address. Okay, but let's see. Okay, transactions. So yes, we will definitely have transactions, right? Transactions, yes. Okay, what other table? So product info, transactions, car loan, bike loan, house loan. Okay, they're all different types of loans. Branches. Okay, maybe yes, we can have branch, yes. Okay, what else? Location maybe can come part of the branch, right? Type of transaction can come part of the transaction. Sorry, after the select command, how did you go into banking database? Okay, so you just go to the left side here, just right click on the database, click refresh, so your new database will show up here. Then right click on that whatever database you want to use, right click on this, then click on this query tool. When you click on query tool, this particular session will open. Okay, it's not going. Okay. um, Registration, full interest rate table, it goes at bottom, bank details. Should we decide account like checking savings? Okay, checking savings, everything will do inside the account, inside the accounts table. Okay, branches, phone number, payment. Okay, payment, maybe we can put it inside the transaction. So I think we have this many tables and should be pretty good. What tables did I have in my mind? I think most of these tables you have already covered, so this is fine. So this is pretty good. Uh, you already understand what data that bank should have, right? Now let's try to do one thing. Let's try to create each of these tables one by one. Maybe I don't think so we need address table. Okay, we'll try to keep it very generic. So we need all the customer info will be present here, all the accounts will be present here, whether it is a savings account, loans account, etc. All the different types of products that is provided by the bank, maybe term deposit or fixed deposit or loans, different types of loans, we'll try to store it here. Employee information here, all the transactions. So any money that is coming in and out of the bank, that will happen here. And branch is basically a bank might have multiple branches. We'll try to store it here. Okay, so this looks pretty good for a bank database. Now let's try to create one table at a time. So let's go ahead and create customers table. So in order to create a table, the syntax is pretty simple. Create table, and then you just mention the table name. So I'm just going to call it like customers. Okay, and then you open the parentheses and close the parentheses, and we just mention. Okay, so I'm just going to zoom this. Okay, so here we just mention all the different columns. Now can you guys tell me, for a customer, what what information about a customer would you like to store in the database? Name, yes. Name, we would have, let's say we can have first name, and I'm going to have it like something like varchar. Okay. Okay, maybe I'll explain this later. So I have first name. Okay, then I have last name. Okay. um, what else? What did you guys tell? So we have customer ID, we have date of birth. Okay, so I'll have customer ID. So I'm just going to call it like, let's say, maybe I'll call it like ID itself. Okay. and then we will have date of birth. Okay, what else? Address. Okay, address also we can have here. Fine. Um, Contact details. Okay, so phone number. So let's say we'll have uh, phone, something like this. Okay, email. We can have email as well. We can have, maybe I'll just keep it for now. I just don't want to make the table too big, because then we'll have to insert a lot of columns, which might take a lot of time. Uh, Address, phone number, first name, last name. Okay, mobile, customer open account number. Okay, so customer's account number. Okay, that's pretty good. So I think because we have a customer might create an account in the bank, right? So we would also want to store his account number. So I'm just going to have it here. So I'll say account number, something like this. Okay, now I think this much is enough for this particular table. Now, before I go ahead and create other tables, right? There are a few things that you need to do. Now, I have created this table, customers. I have not created, but I'm going to create this table, and I have given the name for the table like customers. That is fine. And I have told that I'm going to have these many columns. I'm going to store the customer name. I'm going to store a unique ID for each customer. And then I'm going to have an account number. So if the customer has created account, and the customer can create multiple accounts, so there might be multiple records here for the same customer. His date of birth, his address, and phone number. This is what we are going to store. Now, one additional thing that we need to do in a table is, whenever we create a column, we need to tell what sort of data will be stored in this particular column. Okay, what is a name? Name is basically a text, right? My name Taufik. What does it have? It has some alphabets, like English alphabets, right? Generally, any name you see, we would have alphabets itself, right? I don't know. There might be some names where you might. I remember, if you know Elon Musk, one of Elon Musk kid name. I think there are some alphanumeric characters, and I think maybe there are special characters as well. But generally, we would have an alphanumeric value in a name, right? So whenever you want to store an alphanumeric value in a column, we need to specify this to the database. We need to tell to the database that, hey, database, I'm creating a table customers, and this customers table is having a column first name, and this first name column will always have alphanumeric values. Okay, in order to specify that, we need to use something called as a data type. Okay, so there are few types of data types, and the data type that we will be using in order to store alphanumeric values is something called as varchar. Okay, varchar is a data type name, and this inside here is basically, I'm telling, this first name might be maximum of 20 characters of length. Okay, if I wanted to create a name with 22 characters, then it's not going to allow. Okay, maximum 20 characters, that's what I can give any size limit here, but I'm just giving 20 now. Okay, so this is basically called as a data type. This basically tells, it's kind of like a data rule. For every column, whenever we are creating a table, for every column we need to specify a data type. It's mandatory. Okay, what this will tell to the database is, whenever we are trying to load some data into this table for this particular column, only values which will satisfy this data type will be allowed to get inserted. If I try to insert, let's say, some other type of values, maybe a date value, then it's not going to get inserted here. Okay, because this column is specifically created to hold alphanumeric values that I have specified by using the data type varchar. Okay, so now, since first name is varchar, my last name also should be probably the same. Okay, when it comes to ID, we can have IDs with just numeric values, right? Or we can have IDs with alphanumeric values, like let's say C1, C2, C3, anything. Okay, here maybe what I'm going to do is, I'm just going to keep an numeric value. Okay, so I'll just call it like integer. Now, int basically is a short form for integer. This is a data. This is one more data type. Okay, what this will tell database is that, in this particular column, I'm only going to store integer values. If you try to insert alphabet, okay, any non-integer values, then it's going to throw an error, because the data type here selected for this particular column is integer. Okay, now when it comes to account number, we generally have, we can use integer. Okay, or we have something called as a big int. Okay, now if you're using Oracle or Microsoft SQL Server, I think maybe big int is not supported. You would have something called numbers, I guess. So I'll just keep it int so that this would work in every database. Okay. So because account number will always be a numeric value, right? So I'm just going to use int. Date of birth. Now, date of birth is a date, right? Of course. So for a date, in order, if you want to store a date into a table, then we have specific data type which is called as date. So we can use that. Okay. Address again is a varchar. So, but address might have lot more values. So I'm going to give a size of 200 characters. Okay. And finally, when it comes to phone number, again, let's say I'm going to keep it int. Okay. Now this is basically a table. I have given 1, 2, 3, 7 columns. And for each column, I have given what type of data it's going to store using a data type. These are a few different data types that I have used. Okay. Now it's fine. I can create this table. So let me go ahead and create this table. You can see query returned successfully. And if I minimize this, this is basically the message that I have got. Create table successful. Okay. So the table is created. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to, once you have created a table, if you want to see the data in that table, we can run the select statement, select star from the table name. So select star from the table name, that is customers. Okay. Now what this command basically tells is, it tells, hey database, select every column from this table. Okay. So if I select this and if I run this, you can see that now it's showing me, basically you don't see any data here because I have only created an empty table. I have not loaded any data into this. Okay. So you can only see the columns here. You can see all the column names, first name, last name, ID, and everything. And below here, you can also see the data type. So it's showing character varying because varchar is basically the data type name, but like a long form for that, basically another name for that is character varying. Integer, it's basically int is basically an integer. Date is date. Again, character varying and integer. Okay. Now, this is how we have created a table, and I have created a few different data types. I have given data types to some of these columns. Okay. Is it clear? What I'm going to do is, before I even ask you, I want to explain one more thing. So after this commands, right, we were looking at DDL commands. So I'm going to start with create. Okay. And we have some, all of this, I'll cover it little later. I wanted to show you this. Okay. So data type is very important. You need to understand, and different databases might have hundreds of different data types. We generally don't use all of these data types, but the 5 most commonly used data types is these 5. So we have varchar, int, date, float, and boolean. Okay. Now I told you that this is how a table looks like. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 columns, and you have 4 different rows. You can see that generally values like this. So you have some alphanumeric values, right? Green, forest 5, and then you have some number with some special characters, underscore, dash, and then some alphabets. And then you have only numbers. So all of this can be stored in a varchar column. Okay. But let's say I created a column with int data type. If I'm going to create a column with int data type, it can only store integers. Here you can see I can store 0, I can store a big number, or I can store some values like this. Okay. And let's say if I created a column with date data type, then you can only store date values. But when it comes to date, a date can have multiple different formats. So you see here, this is YYYY dash MM dash YY format, and this is DD slash MM slash YYYY format. Then we have some other formats. So these are all date values, but these are 4 different date formats. Okay. And there are many other date formats as well. Okay. But no matter what date format you have, everything can get stored into the date column. Okay. Then you have another data type called float. If you want to store decimal values, then we can use float data type. Okay. In integer data type, we cannot store decimal values. Even if you try to insert decimal values, it's going to convert it into a whole number. Okay. Then finally, we have a Boolean data type. Boolean is a special type of a data type. It only holds two values, true or false. Okay. We generally use it for specific purposes when we have a column like active, or something like that. Okay. If we want to tell if a particular account is active or inactive, we would generally have true or false. So true will tell that that account is active, false will tell that the account is inactive. Okay. These are the 5 different types of data types that we generally use. There are many other data types as well. You can use it. Maybe when we are looking at some other data sets, we will try to see other data sets, data types. But in general, what is a data type? Data type is a data rule specific to each column. Whenever you have to create a table, you have to create some columns. Every column needs to be associated with the data type. Every data type has a specific set of values it will allow. And once you create a column with a particular data type, only that values will be allowed to get inserted into that column. Okay, this is what data type is. I hope it is clear. Constraints, we'll come to constraints a little later. So is it clear till now? Any confusion about this? So I'm going to go to the Q&A section and see, look for some questions. What will I want commit preserve rows as used when creating temporary tables? I'm not going to be covering temporary tables, Hari, so I'll skip that one. What exactly save? Okay, I already explained that, but we will look into save point in detail when we take some examples. Okay, uh, this rollback is called after commit. Okay, regarding this commit and rollback, I'll come to that. Okay, because if you look at my slide, right, I told you that I'm going to be covering all these commands today and tomorrow. So I think I'll come to DML here, then I'll come to TCL and DCL here. So I'll come to that. Okay, I don't want to answer that now. Let's stick to DDL for now. When creating objects, we use DDL operation. Why truncate command present in DDL? It's a very good question. The reason why truncate is part of DDL, because I told you that DDL command. So if I go here, I told you that DDL basically is used to do something with the structure of the database object, right? Whereas a DML is used to do something with the data. Okay, but in this case, truncate is something where it is removing the data, right? So in that case, why is this not part of DML? The reason is the internal architecture of how truncate is designed. Even though truncate is basically removing the data, the way how it is removing the data is basically by internally removing the table structure and then recreating the table structure. So internally it works like it works with removing and creation of the database structure and not exactly with the data, because when you remove a database structure, automatically it will remove all the data itself. Okay, that is why truncate is part of DDL. Okay, okay, what else? How about HWM? What is HWM, man? I'm not sure about that. PG admin is RDBM. Yes, PGMS, PG. No, PG admin is not a RDBMS. PG admin is a tool. We call it like an IDE. Okay, it's just a tool that can use to connect to the PostgreSQL database. You can use any other tool as well. Okay, for example, I think from SQL Developer you can connect to many other databases. So, and I think there are some common tools which connects to any database, so you can use that as well. Banking. Okay, here PG admin is just a tool. Your face video is displaying at the left, it's covering. Okay, is my face covering the screen? If you make it zoom, are you not able to see the screen, or is my face, because this is something to do with light hole, I if my face is blocking you from seeing my screen, um, either I have to switch off my video. Yeah, I think I have to switch off my camera, but if you can zoom, if you can do a full screen, I think you will, my face should not be shown. Just let me know. Okay, um, can you please show how a database is created? Okay, can you please show how a database is created? So what I can do is, so I'll go here, I'll create another database. Okay, so for anyone who is wondering how I created a database, I'm going to create it again. So this is basically the command. I'll just type it again, create database, and let's say I'm going to create another database, let's say insurance. Okay, so I select it. Okay, and I can execute it here. This is the execute command, but I have already configured a shortcut key to execute it by running the shift and space. So I'm just going to run that. Okay, and you see on the left hand side all the databases will show here. So now I'm going to select this and run this. As soon as I run, you get a message here telling query returned successfully in 136 milliseconds, and you have got the message here. Okay, and but in the left hand side you can still not see the new database. For that, you just right click on the database, click on refresh. When you click refresh, you will see all the new database created. Okay, then in order to connect to this database, either I can just click on this arrow mark here, it should basically automatically connected. You can see database connected. Or, and if you want to open a session, you can just right click and click on this query tool. It will open this session here, and here you can write all your scripts and execute any scripts. Okay, for now I'll just close this. I hope that is clear. What is the difference between varchar and varchar 2? Now, varchar 2 is only supported in Oracle. Okay, in Oracle, varchar is also present. The difference, okay, I would not know the exact difference, but only thing is in Oracle we always use varchar 2. Okay, because I think varchar was a very old data type, but in I think in Oracle 9 or Oracle 8 version, varchar 2 was introduced. It has some improvements over varchar. I am not exactly sure what the improvements were, but we always use varchar 2. But they basically have the same functionality. They are used to store the alphanumeric values. Okay, difference between int and big int. Okay, the difference between big int and big int is I think there is a character limit. Okay, uh, so I think int will support up to eight integer 8 characters. Anything greater than 8 characters, you need to use big int. I think big int will support up to from up to 32 or up to 34, no, or up to 16 characters. Okay, basically the difference is in the character size. Okay, what's the difference between float and decimal? Okay, so not much difference between these data types. Okay, so what you can do is, so I'll give you one website. Okay, so let's go to, because if you want to know the difference between all these data types, and there are hundreds of different data types, what you can do is PostgreSQL data types. Okay, and I'm just searching for PostgreSQL data types. You can do this for Microsoft SQL data types or Oracle data types or whatever. Generally, you would find a documentation. Just go here, because we can use float and decimal basically to do the same thing. Okay, to store the decimal values. Now, what exactly internally there will be some difference in the number of characters they allow and etc etc. So when it comes to PostgreSQL data types, this table is basically kind of like the everything, all the data types that is supported in PostgreSQL is mentioned here. Okay, and you can see we have big int here, and so they are like, this is the name and this is the alias. You can use either of these two names in your script. Okay, and they will basically tell you what is the difference. So you can see int. Okay, so I have int here. It's telling signed 4-byte integer, signed 8-byte integer. So the difference is only in the size. If you want to insert a very big number, then you will need to use big int. But if you want to insert a smaller, maybe up to 8 characters, then you can use int. Okay, we'll try to see some examples when I'm showing you, when we are trying to insert some values. Okay, similarly, float and decimal. Where is float? Okay, so we have float here, and where is, so decimal here? What is the difference? Double precision floating point number, 8 bytes, exact numeric of selected precision. Okay, so I think it's basically to do with the number of decimal points that is allowed after the point. Okay, so you can just look at this for the exact difference between data types. Okay, because we generally don't bother about what data types, what is the difference between these, because most of the time the difference will be in the size. Okay, how many characters it is allowed, and how many characters it is allowed after the decimal points and etc. Okay, so I would recommend that you just read through this slide. I'm going to share it here. Okay, just read through that. Okay, difference between number and int. Number is basically data type supported in Oracle, and I think in some other data type it's almost similar to int. N varchar, again, all of these data types, right? Just check the table, because if I try to explain each and every data type, it's actually not required. Okay, that is why in my slide I have mainly mentioned these 5 data types, because under varchar, again, there will be several subtypes: n varchar, varchar 2, or there is char, and there are others. For integer you have, again, integer, number, something. For float you have decimal, and there may be few others, etc. Okay, but if you understand these 5 data types, you should be pretty good. You don't have to understand each and every data type, because there are hundreds of data types and you will never be using it. In the 14 years of my career, uh, I think I have worked as a developer for almost 8 to 10 years. Maybe I have used hardly 8 to 10 data types. These 5 definitely, and maybe a few others. Okay, we don't really use all the data types. So if you are interested, you can refer to the documentation. Date is also kind of alphanumeric with special characters. This won't store. Okay, it's a very good question from Patak. Okay, so he's telling date is also kind of alphanumeric with special characters. This won't store in varchar. So because if you look at here, this date looks like an alphanumeric value with some special characters. Why can't I store it here? Actually, you can store it there. The only difference is if you store this value here in the varchar column, database or SQL is going to treat it like a varchar. Okay, it's not going to treat it like a date. Okay, so several times when you're writing queries, you may have to find the difference between two dates. Okay, or you may need to like fetch a data for let's say everything that happened between April 1st to April 30th, okay, of a particular year. In that case, you will not be able to apply that filter if it's a varchar column, because a varchar column will treat it just like characters. It's not going to know whether it is April or 1986 or etc. Once you put these values into a date column, then SQL will understand this is a date. When you are putting 07 here, it means that it is July. Okay, so when you are trying to put some filter conditions in your SQL query, SQL is going to apply the filter with respect to a date. If you put it into a varchar, then it's going to apply that filter as a varchar, and how varchar filtering will work from a date is completely different. We'll see this when we'll see how this will differ when we come to an example. Okay, so Pathak, maybe you can remind me, maybe after two classes when we start writing basic SQL queries, we'll see what happens if you create a varchar instead of date. Okay, all your filtering is going to fail. It's not going to work it like date. Okay, but maybe we'll see that with an example. How do you actually fill data in it? Abhishek, what do you mean by how do you actually fill data in it? Do you mean how do you load data into a table? If that's what you're asking, then it is basically using the insert command. Does this data types allow null values? Yes, null values are allowed. We can control that using constraints. I'm going to talk about that a little later. Primary key, will come to constraints in a short while. Basically, varchar alphanumeric values, as I shown here. Okay, how do you change data type once a table? Okay, very good question. How do you change data type once a table is created? This is basically changing the structure of the table, right? And anytime you want to change the structure of the table, we are supposed to use DDL command. So in that case, we have a DDL command alter. So we can use alter. So once a table is created, if I want to change the data type of that table, then I can use the alter command. Okay. What does table? Okay, so I'm going to quickly go through these questions because we are already eight. We only have 20 minutes left. Let me quickly go through this question because I want to cover a few other things as well. We will be using primary key, foreign key, and constraints a little later. It's stored under the default schema. Yes, correct. It will store under public default schema. What will happen if we did not mention any value inside the varchar? Okay, so this question here, what will happen if you don't mention any value inside the varchar? Now, in PostgreSQL, nothing will happen. Okay, so it's not mandatory to provide the size here for in PostgreSQL. But if you're using Oracle, then it is mandatory to use this one. It will throw an error in Oracle. And I think when it comes to MySQL and Microsoft SQL Server, if I'm not wrong, if you don't give the size, and let's say especially when you're using a procedure, if you create a parameter with just varchar, it's only going to accept the very first character, just one character. Okay, so if you want to have more characters, then you need to specify the size. Uh, can you change field name in the table? Yes, we can do that. How do we create shortcut? Shortcut, I think just you can Google it. How do you create shortcut keys for pgadmin? Okay, what is a shortcut for run command? So I think if you go here, you would already see the shortcut command. So when you keep your mouse on any of this, it will basically show you what is the shortcut keys. So you can follow that. Okay, and all of this you can, because I'm not going to tell you how to use the pgadmin tool, because you can Google it. Even I Googled it and I found it. Okay, we'll try to focus on SQL. You mentioned RDBMS only support SQL language. What about Oracle? Oracle is also an RDBMS, and Oracle also uses SQL only. Does this table customer get stored under default schema? Yes, it gets stored under the default schema public. You can see that here. So if I go to my table, so this is basically we have created this table customers, right, under the banking database. And under the banking database, when I just click on the arrow mark, you will basically see all the different things that are present in the database. These are all the default things that the database creates by itself. The important thing for us here is something called a schema. Under the schema, basically a schema, what is a schema basically? So we know that database is a container, right? It stores data. schema is basically we can create sub sections or sub parts of the database, which we can call it like a schema. So a database might have, let's say we created a database with 1 GB of space. Okay. But inside that database, again, I can create 5 different schemas. Okay. And each schema, maybe I can allocate 200 MBs for that. Okay. So one database, I can create 5 different schemas. Each schema is basically a sub part of your database. Okay. You can allocate a particular memory for that and etc. And then any tables that you created inside this schema, they will be specific to that particular schema. So 5 different schemas, I can create multiple different tables under each of the schema, and they will not be shared by each other. Of course, I can give them access using the grant and revoke command, but this is what schema is. Okay. Generally, when you create a database, by default there will always be one schema created. In PostgreSQL, that default schema is called public. In different RDBMS, maybe Oracle or something, the default schema might be something else. Okay. You can just right click, you can just click on the database here, and you can see which schema is created. Okay. I think in Microsoft SQL Server, the default schema is DBO, if I'm not wrong. In Oracle, I don't remember what is the default schema name, but uh, in PostgreSQL, it is public. So once you click on this schema here, this is where you will see all the different database objects that are created. Most of these are basically created by when you create a database, by default it will get created. If you click on this table section here, this is where you will see all the tables that we have created. Okay, now we have created this table customers. Okay, and that is what is shown here. So if you wanted to see the table structure of the basically all the details of the table, you can click on here. You can see all the columns here. Okay, and any constraints, if that table is created, it will show up here. Any indexes, if you have created, it will show up here, etc. Okay, all that is this, and I'm unable to create a database. What error are you getting, Abhishek? Create this one. Okay, SQL. Okay, what is UTF-8? I'm not going to be covering all that. So let there are too many questions. Let's stick to SQL. Let's stick to what will be covered in each session. Okay. If there are questions not related to any of the topics that I'm covering, I'll try to skip that. Okay. Constraints. I'm going to cover constraint very shortly. Does this table customers get stored under? Yes, yes, yes. Uh, date functions can't applicable on varchar. What does that mean, Kiran Reddy? Date functions can't applicable on. I did not understand. Can I use a table that already exists on a data type for another table? Can I use a table that already exists as a data type? Can Okay, so you're talking maybe about nested tables or something. Can I use a table that already exists in a data type? So I think you're talking about some collection types. It's it's a different concept, Bhavesh. I'll not be talking about that here. Okay. Uh, Create table. This one suggestion on Lightroll. If we can have something like a document on the site which can have all the important text links shared during the class by the this document, right, Suraya, what you're talking about, I will be sharing whatever I create here, right? I'm going to share it with you after the class. Use this one instead of. Okay, can you explain what schema is? I already explained. I'm using Oracle SQL Developer. How do I create a table? Eh, okay, you SQL Developer, you just right click and you can open a session. Just Google it. How do you open a session for a schema? It is pretty straightforward. Okay, so can you explain schema once again? Schema is basically it's basically a subsection of your database. Okay, so every database can have multiple schemas. Okay, and you can create. So what happens is, in generally, I'll give you one example of my own case. We have one database in the project that we are working, but inside that database we have created multiple schemas. So what we have done is, for the developers we have created one schema and we call it like dev schema. For the testers, the QA testers, we have created another schema and we call it like, I don't know, maybe we call it some testing schema or QA schema. And then for the business users who basically will not have any access to modify the data, only to view the data, we create another schema where we call it like, let's say, business or maybe the view schema or something like that. Okay, so what we do, the same database, multiple different schemas. So whenever I want to do development, I come to this development schema and I do all my development, because as part of development I will be doing lot of wrong things and lot of mistakes and everything. And once everything is ready, then I give that access to the testers. Maybe I share my script, and then the tester will execute it, and testers will use that schema for their own purpose. Okay, and then other schemas for other purpose. Each schema will be for some specific purpose, but they will all be part of the same database. Okay, so you can just call it like one part, multiple. You can create multiple parts of the database using a schema. Okay, okay, fine. So let's go ahead. I think we've answered to a lot of questions, but I'm not gone ahead with this DDL creation. Um, I hope this is all clear about the table creation. There are a few other things that I want to talk about, but before that, right, let's do one thing. What else I had in this slide? So I had this table creations and alter commands and drop, right? Okay, so let's do one thing. Okay, okay. So I'm going to show other commands of the DDL. So if I go back, I told you that as part of DDL, we have create, alter, drop, and truncate. So what I'm going to do is, we have used create table to create a table. Now this table is not final. Why? Because I have not created constraints. What are constraints? I'm going to explain that a little later. Okay, but this is not wrong. This is created the table, but there is a reason why we use constraints, because we want to control the type of data that gets loaded into a table, so that we can avoid having wrong data in a table, which we can do by using constraints. We can also build relationships using constraints. I'm going to talk about that a little later. But before that, what I want to do is, someone asked if I wanted to change something in this table, okay, or remove a column, or rename a column, or rename the table itself, how I can do that. So we use the create command to create a table. But let's say now, after you created the table, you realize that I wanted to maybe change the name of this particular column ID. Okay, instead of making it ID, I wanted to name it like customer ID. Okay, in that case, you don't have to drop the entire table again. We can just use a command called as alter. So I can just say alter table customers. Okay, and I have to rename this one, right? So alter table name, rename column, and the column name ID to, let's say I'm going to name it like cust ID. Okay, so this is just the syntax. Okay, let's see if this works. So I'm going to run this, and you can see it is successful. It has run. And now if I go and look into my customers table, now you can see the ID column name has changed to customer ID. Okay, so what this means is, I created the table, and in order to basically, if I wanted to change any structure of the table, I use the alter command. And alter is not only used to change the column name. So let's say if I wanted to change the table name itself. Okay, so from customers, I wanted to change it something else. Let's say alter table customers, and I'll say rename table, rename, I think, rename to, maybe I'm just going to now call it like customers new. Okay, so if I execute this, you can see that it is successful now. Now I have renamed customers table to customers new. Now if I execute the select star from customers, you can see it's telling relation customers does not exist. Okay, basically this table does not exist. But why? Because I have renamed this table to customers underscore new. Now if I execute customers underscore new, okay, customer underscore new, now if I execute this, you can see I'm able to view the data. So when you can use the alter command to do a lot of things. Okay, so what are the different things you can do? I'll just try to mention it here. So we can rename column, we can rename table names, table name. Okay, and what I can do, I can modify data type. Okay, or what else? So I can add a column. Okay, I can remove a column. Okay, and there are a few other things. Okay, so I'll try to do maybe a couple of more things. So let's say if I want to change the data type. Okay, so I'll tell I have this data type phone. Okay, and I want to change it to, let's say, big int. Okay, in that case, what I can do is modify, oh no, where was it, alter table here, customers, and I'll tell alter table name, alter column. What is the column name? Phone, phone, alter column name, phone, type, and I'll give the new type, let's say big int. Okay, now if I execute it, customers does not exist. Or because I already changed this customers now, what I'll do is I'll go back to the old name. Okay, I'll just keep the old name. So I'll rename customers new to customers. Okay, so I'll just execute this. Okay, and now I'll execute this command where I'm trying to change the data type of one of my columns. It is successful. And now if I go and execute, let's say, execute this, you can see now phone is now big int. Previously it was integer. Now it is big int. Okay, so we can change any changes in the table structure. Okay, with relate to column data type, table name, column names, or you can also add constraints. But we'll come to constraints a little later using the alter command. So alter command basically is used to change the structure of the table. Okay, that's what it is. What is the next command? We have drop. Now drop, I think everyone already understands. Basically, if I wanted to remove the table completely from the database, then I can use the drop command. So I can just tell drop table customers. And if I execute this, the table is dropped. Now, if I execute select star from customers, you can see table does not exist. If I now just do a refresh of my schema, if I go to public, if I go to tables, you can see that that table does not exist here. Okay, so this is what create, alter, and drop command is. Truncate, I'm going to explain once we have loaded some data, because we need data to show truncate. Of course, I can do trunc. Now I already dropped the table, but yeah. Okay, fine. So we have hardly 7 minutes left. What I want to do is I want to give you an assignment. Okay. So my intention with this class was I wanted to create all these tables. Okay. And I wanted to create all those other data types and also start with the constraints. But since I think there were too many questions also, and that is good. You ask me questions, that is good. I was not able to cover all this, but I hope you have got basic understanding of how to create a table. What are the columns a table should have? What data types we should tag to a column based on our understanding of what type of data it's going to hold. So my assignment for this class is I want you guys to create these 5 tables. Okay, create these 5 tables and you come up with your own columns. Okay, because what does an account table? Can you tell me, just to see if you have the understanding or not? Can you tell me an account table? What should it have generally? Okay, the most basic column, what an account table should have. Anyone? Type of account number. Okay, perfect. Account number, definitely an account table should have account number, right? And it should also have few other columns as well, right? Perfect, what you guys are telling. So what I want you guys to do is create this table, come up with at least few columns. Don't just create one column. A table should at least have, you come up with your own understanding of uh, whatever you know about banking. And I know that every one of you here is having a bank account, of course, right? So you will have some understanding of the bank, and that is why choosing the banking data set as the first data set is pretty good, because everyone understand what bank is. So with your own understanding, come up with what details you need to store in the accounts table, create the columns, use the correct data types, and then create that table. Okay, and same way do for products. So when I'm saying products, what are the different types of products a bank can have? It can have loan. Okay, maybe different types of loan. So it can have car loan can be one product, house loan can be another product, fixed deposit can be another product, a savings account can be another product. I'm just telling these are the different types of product. These are not the columns. Don't create columns for these. There can be one column maybe with product ID and product name. So for each of these products, they can have one unique ID. Okay, you create a unique ID or whatever for that. Okay, so come up with this products table, come up with the employees table, come up with the transactions table. What? Okay, for a transaction, can you tell me what a transaction would have? Generally, when you look at your bank statement, what does your bank statement have? Bank statement itself is a transaction, right? So what does your transactions or bank statement have? Okay, yes, whether it is a credit or a debit, so it should be like maybe type of transaction, right? That can be one of them. What else? Amount, yes, every transaction needs to have an amount, right? And date, right? Date, when did this transaction happen, right? And few others it can have. Same way for branch, you would know what a branch will have. Generally, the bank name, the location, branch code, something like that. So, what I want you guys to do is, with your own understanding, okay, come up with your own, because every person might have different understanding. Come with your own name, create these 5 tables, come up with these columns, and create this table. When doing so, do one additional thing. That additional thing is, we are creating a database. We are creating a relational database. What does that mean? The tables need to be related to one another. Every table does not have to be related to every other table, but there has to be a relation that has to be formed, right? We will not be using constraint now. If you are already aware of constraints, if you want to use, well, go ahead and create it. But for others, try to, whenever you are creating some columns, see how the tables would be related. How customers table would be related to accounts, how accounts table would be related to products, how employees tables would be related to any of this, okay, how transactions tables would be related to accounts. Just think of that and think what columns we may need to include in these tables, okay. Trust me, this is very important. You may think that SQL is all about writing SQL queries. Actually, it is not. The most important thing for SQL is to look at the data, understand the data. Only when you understand the data, you will be able to solve the particular problem by writing the query. And this exercise that I'm giving you here is going to help you to think what data is, what type of data you need to have, how do you create a table, how do you form relationship between these tables, okay. So when you're creating a table, just don't create a table having columns, all these columns, and no tables will be related to one another. Also think how you can create some common columns with which you can relate these tables, okay. You don't have to use primary key and foreign key. If you are already aware of the concept, you can use, but not mandatory, because I'm going to start with constraints in the next class, okay. So can you do this assignment, everyone? Can you create these 5 tables? And I want everyone to create this assignment. And what you can do is, once you have created it, you can share, maybe you put it in a text file or something, and then you can share that file in the what is that, in the Telegram group, okay. Everyone, please do that. You have 170 people here, and I'm sure many people is going to watch the recording. So try to complete this assignment, okay, because if you don't do this, I will have to do this again in the next class. I can do it, no problem, but again a lot of time will be required. But since I've already explained one table, the concept would be the same, and this is also going to help you to think, okay. You need to think. You just should not be seeing and doing, okay. So I'm going to share all of this. So I'll just copy this. Let's see if I can copy everything in the tab. I'm not sure if I can. Oh, I can, but it's not very neat. So what I'm going to do is, I'll just copy this into a text file, okay. Hmm. I'll just paste it here. Note. Okay, so I created this file. I'm going to share this in the Telegram. This is everything that we have written here. Okay, I think I'll also include the create database command here. So I think that's all I have for this class. It's already time now. If you have any questions, you can ask me, or else we can end the class for today. Make sure to complete the assignment before the next class, okay, because we'll get into constraints and relations. If you have not created all these tables, and if you don't think about these tables, then uh, you may not find constraints that easy to understand, okay. So let me look. I'm just going to spend 5 more minutes if to answer any questions that you might have, okay. If you have no questions, then we can end. Anyone? How to load data in these columns? Okay, good question, Kunal. We will be covering that when I come to DML, because in order to do anything with data, load data, remove data, modify data, we use DML commands, but I'm still explaining DDL commands. So maybe tomorrow, yes, tomorrow we will be looking at how to load data. How can we link the tables to each other? Okay, good question. Um, I'm going to explain that tomorrow. Okay, you try to think. You think what would be the linkage between a transaction and account, because every transaction that is going to happen, because when you look at your bank statement, every transaction is related to your account, right?
So that means a transaction has to be related to an account, right? How do you relate it? You need to have some columns, maybe something, right? So your transaction table needs to have an account number, and that account number should be present here, and that's how you can tell that these two tables are related. That's just one example. Okay. We can also use constraints, but that one I'll cover tomorrow. Okay. It would be great if you can take up the questions at the end only, as it is distracting and breaks your flow of thought. Okay, so Yoga says if I take the questions at the end, I can do that. Uh, but what I'll do is I will look at some questions in between as well, for two reasons. If I take all the questions at the end, right, it will just be that I am continuously talking for 1.5 hours. It might get boring for you. I would like to have some interaction, because when I read your questions, I get to interact with you more. Okay, that's one reason. The second reason is, if I look at the end, there might be hundreds of questions and it might be too much for me to answer. Okay, so if there are repeated questions, I will skip it. If there are questions not related to the class, I will skip it. Okay, so we can do that. So if you ask me a question not related to the session or the topic that I'm teaching, I try to skip that. Okay, so this way maybe we can save some time. But I understand your point, Yoga. From tomorrow, let's have Q&A at the end. It will help to cover the topics. Okay, so we'll try to have Q&A at the end also, but maybe some questions would be required to be answered during the concept explanation itself. Otherwise, if someone has not understand the concept, and if I just go on explaining every other concept, then it would not be fair on them as well. Every 30 minutes you can take up. Okay, that's a good suggestion, Deepak. Maybe I can take up a question after a break. Maybe let's say after 20 minutes or after 30 minutes. I can do that, Deepak. Please give some knowledge about tools and PLSQL, PGSQL, PGSQL interface. I don't want to spend time explaining about the tools, because they are all self-explanatory. You just open a tool, just create a session, see where you can execute it, and with time you will learn. Okay, so because you have so many tools and everything. If I start covering every single tool that people are using, it's that is not part of this course, Vijay. Sorry for that. Seriously, it's very distracting, as most questions are not related to the topic. Okay, Krishna, any question not related to the topic, I will not take it maybe from tomorrow. Okay, it's big. Uh, all the notes, right, whatever I'm writing here, I'm going to share it. So everything that I write, I will try not to delete anything, so that I will share it with you. Of course, when it comes to data sets and SQL queries and scripts, those I will share separately as well. Okay. um, this is KP. Have just enrolled to the class today. I missed 2 days yesterday's class. Can I get video? Yes, the recordings will be available in Lighthall page. You can take it from the Lighthall classes page. Too many questions is hampering the learning. Can we keep a dedicated time of 15 minutes for questions? Okay, so many people are having issues with the questions. Uh, so let's do one thing from tomorrow. I will look into the questions after I cover a particular concept. Okay, I'm not going to take questions in between a particular concept. Okay, maybe it might be in 30 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever. Okay, let's turn off chat until the last 15 minutes of class. I agree, questions in the class are distracting. Okay, you will get recordings here. It's better to make note of your lectures in notebook. Can we insert numbers, dates into varchar? Yes, you can. So Samir, if you look at the slide, right, um, in this varchar, you can see we have numbers, and you can also insert dates here. So that's fine. But only thing, it will SQL is going to treat it like a varchar. It's not going to treat it like an integer. So even though 123 looks like a number for us, for SQL, this 123 is a text. Okay, and when we write some SQL queries, you will realize how does it actually make a difference. Let the learners take notes on their own questions and ask them in the last 15 minutes. Can you share? So the PPT is already shared in Telegram as well as in the Lighthall class page. You can take it from there. Tim, noted on your point. So from tomorrow, I'll try to take up questions after a particular concept is completed, or maybe we'll dedicate a particular time after 30 minutes for these questions. Okay, so we'll do that. Okay, so I think the time is up, and I hope you found some value from this class. Was it helpful, guys? Um, did you guys get some understanding? How to check the data type in a column? Okay, there are some dictionary tables, you can do that. Maybe I will try to cover that in a future class. um, or you can just go to the tool and right click on the table and you will see all the data types. Maybe the questionnaires can be even answered in Telegram group. I think after command syntax is, what is that? I think after command, alter command syntax is different in SQL Server to rename column data type to add. I think you should mention that keywords are different in SQL. Okay, so if there is a syntax difference, you let me know if you find some error with the same syntax that I have shared here. I can share you the syntax for the other databases. Class was slightly helpful, but will be more helpful when answering questions are less of a focus. Okay, so Adam tells the answering questions should be less of a focus. Noted on that. It's too basic, waiting for the meat and potato stuff to kick in intermediate advance. So Sandeep, what I would say is I think you should be skipping the first maybe 5 to 10 sessions then, Sandeep, because if you are already aware of basic SQL, then these classes are not going to help you a lot, because you when I come to maybe the intermediate concepts, you should then be more active. Please share active Telegram link. Already shared it in the announcement section. You can take it from there. So how to close PG admin without data loss? How to close PG admin? So I can close a PG admin now itself because I don't have any open transactions. So I think you can just right click here and you have disconnect. Yeah, you have disconnect database, right? So I can just click disconnect database and then I can just close this. So I'll just close it because I have no open transactions. That's it. Okay. So I think that's all, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I'll see you all again tomorrow. Okay. Bye. Let me stop the recording first.